Why has the Radnor Board of Commissioners, on a majority partisan vote, approved a large budget for 2021 without taking a scalpel, I should say, to some of the unnecessary, I'm sure they're unnecessary expenses? As a consultant for over 40 years, my experience was you could go into any organization and find at least 10% cost reduction, at least 10%. So far as I know, there's been no attempt, at least up to now, in spite of the fact that the township faces enormous problems, financial problems, economic problems, business problems, to do the responsible thing. That and more in this edition of Commissioner's Corner with 6th Ward Commissioner Jake Abel, 6th Ward Republican Commissioner Jake Abel. Jake, how are you?
I'm well, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Well, as you can tell, I'm all wound up on this budget issue. It's a bit esoteric because of the new reassessment, the countywide reassessment, and the effect that had on the millage, et cetera, and some transition that was made that I don't fully understand because I'm not a math guy. But perhaps you can help us understand what the board has done and whether or not it actually results in a tax increase or a transfer of the tax burden to residents.
Well, yeah, so in basic terms, no tax increase that we're typically used to. So you're not going to see a millage rate go up. But let's unpack this a little bit. So you had the millage rate, the new millage rate, it goes down, and we were reassessed by the county. And the argument is that's going to be revenue neutral. My position on that is it's not revenue neutral, and it's actually on the backs of the residents because the old proportion was 70-30 residents to businesses, which make up that tax. After the reassessment, it's closer to 75-25 resident businesses. So the residents are actually going to be paying more after the reassessment. Some will see less, but overall, I think we're going to see more residents with a higher tax bill in 2021.
Jake, am I being too rough in my opening about the necessity of taking a red pencil and crossing out some of what might argue, some people may argue are unnecessary expenses? Was there any attempt to do that?
No, and
they simply take last year's budget and roll it in.
Well, quite honestly, well, I think there's more effort that goes into it, and I don't want to say that the budget, there was no thought into this budget, but I think you're accurate, and it's been my experience over the last 3 years is there's been no attempt to take out redundancies or to look closely line item by line item and really question whether it's needed within the township. And the obvious, and it's a conversation I've brought up now 3 years in a row, is on the appropriations to 501c3 organizations that aren't township organizations. Why in a year where we saw record shortfalls in revenue, why are we paying those same organizations at 100% request levels? If we're all suffering from the shortfall, it should be spread out throughout the budget, not and everybody should have to see some cuts.
But a counter argument might be those people are providing necessary services, some of which might otherwise have to be provided by the township or other organizations in the township.
Yeah, and I think there's an argument there, and I like take the fire company for example. They should be pulled out. If I was taking the lead on this, the fire company should be pulled out because if you have a fire at your home, you're going to expect the fire company to show up. Right. So yeah, the fire company should be funded at 100% because that's a cost that we're going to pick up regardless. Sure. But you have a number of organizations, and we had this discussion on Monday night that they're seeing shortfalls elsewhere because of the pandemic. I'm not sure that Radnor Township should be the one that comes in paying 100%.
Well, do those, without naming them, do those nonprofit organizations receive subsidies from other townships in which they have operations?
I think, well, the ones that reside outside of Radnor Township, yeah,
Yeah.
I would assume that they go and receive funding from neighboring townships. And I don't know if they were funded at 100% from those neighboring entities. I'm assuming not.
Yeah. Well, philosophically, I'm with you. On the other hand, again, I think the counter argument might be even those nonprofits that are outside of this township, in all probability, provide services that benefit residents of this township. How should the expense be covered?
Well, so I mean, if that's the case, we're going to have a long list of organizations that put in requests next year. Anyone that services a Radnor resident is going to say, we're essential then to Radnor residents, and we should be funded. So I guess the question is, as a board, what are our priorities in funding?
Yes.
What are we responsible for?
Yeah, that's a conundrum, because the need is great and is going to get greater, particularly those organizations that serve the older population, as you know.
Yep. And we have several of those in the township.
Yes, I know.
So there's a little bit of redundancy there when you have Wayne's senior services, the library, art center.
That alone, because of the implications, that alone deserves special attention, a special committee, some organization, somebody on the board or this committee of the board to take a look at the needs, those organizations, the worthiness of those organizations, whether or not they're run fiscally, and you know what I'm talking about. Let's take a hard look at them before deciding whether or not we're going to give them $1.
Well, and let me just be clear. I mean, they're all worthy organizations, and they all do great work.
Yes.
The question is it a responsibility of local government to fund those? Yeah.
Well, I guess we're going to continue to the board is going to have to continue to deal with these thorny questions. Who gets it? Who get?
I suspect we're going to be in a similar position next 2021 next year this time for budget purposes. So we really need to have more communications, more conversations as a board, so we're not in the same position at this time next year.
No. Well, COVID is going to be with us for a long time in one form or another. We'll never be the same. And I suspect that means government will never be the same either, or it shouldn't be, because it's going to have to adapt to the needs of the community. Looking at next year, what are the board's goals? What are your goals for next year? And to what extent will COVID continue to be an issue that has to be taken into account?
Well, I think let's take the elephant in the room. I think the pandemic is still going to linger into at least the early part of 2021.
Yes.
And we've seen a number of storefronts in the township close and go dark. So I think the impact on the 2021 budget is going to be significant. So the goal next year has to be looking at how we can provide the necessary services and really not put this on the backs of the residents. My goal, as always, is not to have huge tax increases or any tax increase at the end of the year. So identify redundancies, look where we can provide more for less. And the one area where I think we should probably focus first is bringing in a city planner to look at our downtown area and look at our business districts. And we have 3, and one in the Garrett Hill area, one in downtown Wayne, and then we have a small business district in West Wayne. What does a business district look like in a town like Radnor? And I know I've talked to some folks in this arena and who have done work in other similar townships, and they said Radnor's well past due to have this conversation.
Why?
Well, retail's not what it was 10 or 20 years ago, and we've seen that firsthand with all the stores that have closed and gone elsewhere. So if we know that those types of stores are leaving, what do we need to fill that space, and what is sustainable for the long term?
Do you have any idea what a study of that type would cost?
I don't, and I, the conversations I've had, I didn't get into that. That's a conversation the board as a whole needs to have, and decide what path we want to go down.
Well, given the fact that the township over the years, at least the years I've been paying attention, has spent tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars on consulting of one type or another, it seems to me this would be at the top of the list.
I would think so, and think cost benefit. If you can figure out your downtown area, then you've solved some of your revenue problems, because you'll be seeing more mercantile tax.
Yeah.
And just this year alone, if we would have spent wisely and not paid overtime for a construction project to finish, to allow buses to go through when there was no school, if we were able to think long term and not trying to pander for votes, we would be saving more money, and those costs wouldn't be so significant, because we would have saved and not spent foolishly.
Yeah. Have the business owners, the Wayne Business Association, for example, are they coming to the township with requests for not money, but for help, assistance, a strategic plan? Let's partner together.
Yeah, I haven't had those specific conversations, but I know the township is in constant communications with the business association, and I think they would welcome these types of discussions, and I'm sure they'd be ready and willing to partner with the township on looking at the way forward.
Is that the number one priority for next year?
I think it has to be the number one priority. I haven't heard from the other board members. I would assume some of it's based on your geography and where you're located in the ward. So, flooding is always a top priority.
When does the board set its goals and objectives for the following year? Is that part of the budget process, or is that separate?
Well, in theory, it should be done early in the year, but it's never been a priority, and we've never had that discussion.
So it's implicit in the budget. There are numbers against certain items, so those are the priorities.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not a way to run a railroad. Well, the railroads aren't doing so well either. So.
Yeah, I mean, but again, I think the more we have these conversations early in the year, hopefully they'll gain traction, and we'll start to prioritize, so we're not coming into the budget season in November without a plan.
Jake, speaking of transportation, how's that for a segue? What's going on with the bridge at Darby and Church, I guess it is?
Yeah, I don't have good news for you.
Supposed to be done in December originally.
Yeah, so my understanding was it would be completed and opened early 2021. But based on some communications I've seen over the last couple of days, there has been a pushback, and it looks like we're probably not opening that bridge until the end of March, early April.
Huh. It better be a beautiful bridge. It better be a beautiful bridge.
Well, I've been down there to take a look firsthand, and from what I've seen, they look like they're doing good work. I understand it's an inconvenience for the neighbors, and honestly, we've got a lot of activities down in the other end of the township. So I use Darby Paley all the time, so I can cut through and bypass Conestoga. So I eagerly await its opening too.
Well, it's an inconvenience you kind of get used to, but I don't want to get used to it for much longer. Okay, well, we're wrapping up the year. Again, thank you for all of your hard work this year. Looking forward to next year as you continue to champion for responsible government, and joined, I hope, by your colleagues on the board. As I've said many times before, regardless of party, it's a tough job. They put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and for that, they should be commended. I just wish there were more cooperation and less partisanship on the board to get things done for the benefit of all residents of Radnor Township.
Agreed.
So much for my homily. This is Commissioner's Corner. I'm Rick Anthony with my good friend, Commissioner Jake Abel. Until next time, take very good care of yourselves and Happy New Year.